All right, ladies and gentlemen and programmers, we're going to do part 6 of lesson 5 of the piano. We're going to learn how to use an array, which is super awesome. Okay, here's what you should have so far. You should have threaded coding in your piano world. So what that means is this. It means that we're not using an ACT method, but your constructor is a series of method calls, method call, and method call. All right. Threaded code in the key class as well, and then also don't get rid of the code that plays the notes 10 times. So if you look in key, we have this code called play 10 times, and we don't delete that. We're not using it. We're just using the regular old play, but we're not getting rid of the play 10 times. Okay. Okay, so our code plays keys nicely, but each key still plays the same note. So if you look at this thing and I hit run, they're all playing the G, and they're all playing 3/8 wave. Okay, so we need to figure out what to replace G and 3/8 wave with. Answer this question and answer it the best that you can. The hope is that it's probably wrong for now, but write it down in your notes. So here's the question again: is we have this code that we're using, we have this code that we're using right now, make keys with loop, and we have this G, and we have 3/8 wave. What do we replace that with? Okay, and answer that real quick. Okay, possible ideas are to use something like an instance variable or a variable to replace the G and the 3/8 wave. So let's try that. What happens if we use an instance variable, key and sound instead? So let's figure out what that's going to look like. So up here at the top, right after the class header or class signature, I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to put in those instance variable. Private string key equals H. Private string sound equals 3G.wave. Right? So we have an instance variable that holds the key and the sound. And so we're going to come down to public void make white keys with loop. And we're going to replace the G with key. And we're going to replace the sound with, or the 3/8 wave with sound. Okay, so if we replace those strings with variables, what's the difference? Well, let's see what happens. I had a little error here. Okay. All right, let's see what happens. Okay, so it works. I hit run, and they don't work with G. Now they all work with H. So we've replaced it with a variable, but we have the exact same issue because, where are we at? Okay, because key is always equal to H and sound is always equal to 3G.wave. So we have the exact same issue. So a regular old instance variable isn't going to help. Okay? But what I want you to do is describe in your notes, describe the perfect instance variable that could solve the problem. So we are going to use an instance variable, but we have to have one that's a little bit more powerful or robust than key and sound. So describe the perfect variable for key and the perfect variable for sound in your own words. Write that down, and I'm going to quiz you on it, and I want your idea right now before I maybe later give you the answer. Okay, so again, our code still places the keys nicely. They're all scoochied over, but each key still plays the same note with the same key. Now, here's what we need. Here's the idea. We need a special kind of instance variable that could hold multiple things. So instead of just G, it could hold an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and so on and so forth. So one instance variable that holds multiple things. And if we did that, answer this question, how could we know which one to use? So if it holds all of these, how would it know when to use A, B, C, D if it's holding all of them at the same time? Okay, so here's a solution. We're going to use variables for the keyboard key and the sound file and assign different values to them each time the loop executes. So the first time through the loop, we want it to be an A. The second time through the loop, B. The third time, C. Fourth, D, so on and so forth. So every time it goes through the loop, we're going to choose a different item in our instance variable. Okay, so write this down. An array is an object that can hold many variables and store many values. It is a box filled with multiple boxes. Write that down. So in our old way, we have private string name. We have a box called name, and it could hold, we say name equals Fred. Name is holding one thing. Okay, now there's a different way to do it. If we say private string names, we put the square brackets there. That's saying that names is an array. It's a variable that can hold multiple things. So then we'd initialize it. We'd say names equal, and now we have a curly bracket, all of these things. So we have a box called names that's holding each one of these things. Okay, this expression creates an array object and fills it with the strings A through H. And we can access the individual elements in the array. Okay, so this is the array. These are the elements of the array by using an index position number. So this guy right here, well, how do we know which one to use? Well, this one right here would be names 0, names 1, names C, so on and so forth. Write all this down. Okay, so here's how to visualize it. So if we had an instance variable, so here's the code, private string bracket names, names equals this. Okay, that's the actual Java code. It would create a box called names, and it's a box filled with individual boxes, and each of the individual boxes has an index number. This one would be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. Okay, what is the index number for the string D? Well, index number is 3. What is the name of that box? Well, the name of that box would be names 3. What is the index for the string K? It would be 10. What is the name of this box? Its name would be names 10, right? So each of these things, they're all part of names, but they each have their separate names. So this is names 0, names 1, names 2, names 3, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to create these parallel arrays, right? And they're called parallel arrays because this is, even though it's two separate lines of code, we did that because it doesn't all fit on one screen. We want to be able to see it. So this is one line of code. This is one line of code. This is creating an array called keys. This is creating an array called white keys, white notes. And they are parallel because the key that plays when I press the A key is going to play 3c.wave. Notice, by the way, the .wav is gone. We're going to fix that later. The key that plays when I press the S key is going to play 3d.wave, and so on and so forth. So these things are parallel. It's called a parallel array. Make sure you write this down. Okay, so let's write this code. So we're going to go into piano. Okay, we're going to go right after public class piano extends world. Okay, we're going to go in right here after the class header, and we're going to type in the code for our arrays. Okay, so it's going to look something like this: private string, square bracket, white keys equal, and then we're going to do all 12 of the keys, and then we're going to do the same thing: private string, square bracket, white notes equal, and then we're going to fill it with all of the notes. Now notice that these are all missing the .wav. We're going to fix that later. Okay? All right, so get that for now. So we have our array. We're not using it yet. That'll probably be the next step, is to actually start to use it. Okay, so we can now adapt our loop to make use of the array elements. Okay, so we're going to make a new method called make white keys with loop and array. So let's take a look at that. So if you come down here, we're going to have, okay, so we have make white keys with loop. So I'm going to F8 that. We're going to use it with loop and array. So I'm going to hit F8, and then we're going to, I already had it made, but here. So we're going to call on a method called make white keys with loop and array, and then we're going to create that method. Okay, so the easiest way is just to copy and paste make white keys with loop, copy and paste that, and then we're going to modify it, make white keys with loop, and then add and array. Okay, and then we're going to modify it. We still have int I equals 0. Now we're going to say this: while I is less than, instead of 12, we're going to say white keys.length. So what that does is, how many times is this loop going to run? Well, it's going to run at white keys.length. Well, how long is white keys? Well, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so if I were to add a comma and another thing, then it would run the loop 13 times. But it's going to run the loop this many times. And so there's a couple things we hopefully know about this. Well, what does that dot mean? It's the dot notation. So we're saying, hey, white keys. He's like, what do you want? And then we're asking him to do something. So length is a method that he knows how to do. He just counts up how many items are in his array. Okay, so now we're going to say add object new key, and then look what we've done here. So we're going to say white keys I in square brackets and white notes I in square brackets and then dot wave. Now, how does this work? Well, let's go through it. So we have int I equals 0. What does I equal? It's equal to 0 the first iteration through the loop. Okay, so is 0 less than white keys dot length, which is 12? Yes, so it's going to do it. So it's going to say add object new key. And so you know our key, the first thing it needs is it needs the key. And so we're going to say white keys I. Well, what's I, the first iteration through the loop? I is 0. Well, what's white keys 0? Well, let's go back. Let's go to the top and look. White key 0, the first item in the array is A. Okay, so it's going to say A, comma, and then same thing, white notes I. Well, what's I? We know it's 0, so we're going to look at white notes, and it's 3C. Okay, so the first item in that array is 3C, so 0, and then here's what we're going to do, plus dot wav. So 3C is string, and then we're adding dot wav to it, so now it's going to combine those or concatenate those into 3C dot wav. And then our code here is the same, where we're just each iteration through the loop, we're scooching it over. All right, let's try it again. So now we get down here, we say I plus plus. So now I is equal to 1. So is 1 less than 12? Yes. So we're going to add object new key 1 and white notes, white keys 1 and white notes 1. Well, what are those? Well, it's going to be S, 3D, and then again we're going to concatenate it here with and add dot wave to it. Okay? All right, make that loop, get it to work, and see what happens. If you did it right, it should do something like this, where when you run it, now all of a sudden we have all the keys, and they're playing with different keyboard keys, and they're playing different sounds. Okay? All right, now, what does this return? We just answered that white keys. So you're saying, hey, white keys. He says, what? And you say, hey, how long are you? And he's going to count the number of items in the array. And it's going to, in this case, it's going to return 12. Okay, so we use the plus symbol here with string. So white notes is holding letters. This is in quotation mark, it's letters. Okay, dot length returns the number of elements, boxes in the array. The plus symbol when used with string stands for string concatenation. Write all this down. Whenever you're adding numbers together, 1 plus 1, that's addition. But when you're smushing string together, adding strings together, that's called concatenation. It merges two strings together into one. What would white notes 3 plus dot wave create? Well, let's take a look. So if we have, what was it? White notes 3. Okay, so if we look at white notes 3, it's 0, 1, 2, 3. It's going to be 3F plus dot wave is going to be 3F dot wave. Okay? Okay. All right, so make the changes, make sure you do everything I just did as far as the code. And what is an array? Why does a loop work so well with an array? And how do I access these? Answer those questions, and then we're going to go on to part 7. Okay, so what is an array? An array is a box filled with multiple boxes. It's one variable that has a bunch of different elements inside of it. Why does a loop work so well with an array? Well, the reason a loop works really well with an array is that a loop has this index number, right? And every time you go through it, it increases by 1. So you have 0, then the next time through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that works really great with an array because an array has these elements, each with an index number, and this one, just like the index number in the loop, it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so if you look at this, a loop, it makes it really easy for a loop to go through, and each iteration through the loop, it accesses a different element inside the array. How do I access the string C if the array is named Alfie? Well, it would be alpha square bracket 2. Okay, the 2 in square brackets. All right, good work. I'm going to show you one more time what we have, just in case you need a little work on this thing. Let me make it big, and of course it hates it when I do this, but let me show you what we have so far. You can be done. If you got everything and it's working, you can be done, but let me just show you the code one more time for anybody who needs it. Okay, so here's what we have so far. We have our piano, and we've added our 2 arrays. Looks like that. Okay, so we've F8'd out all these things, and now we have make white keys with loop and array. We have our method definition here, make white keys with loop and array, and we modified some things. So we have instead of this being 12, we have white keys.length. Okay, add object new key, and then in the parameters, we're using our array, and this part has stayed the same. So that is what we have so far.